Let's try one more time. Share the screen. There we are. We're still on the first verse, and we need to do Targum Rishon before we can move to Targum Sheni, which is even cooler. But Targum Rishon is okay. So he went out into the city, and the question is, actually, why did he go out into the city? Like, if I'm me personally, if I'm feeling tremendously distressed, I want to crawl into a hole and pull it in over myself. I don't go out into the public screaming and crying. I want to go find somewhere where I can cry by myself. So for me, at least, I have a personal question as to what's going on. And in fact, both Targumim are going to address that issue also. What is it that Mordechai was trying to accomplish by going out into the public like this? Okay. So the first Targum, I don't know if I can make Safari let me. It's this tiny little piece of the screen over here. I could maybe. I don't know if I can make it be like full size. Maybe if I go down here and say open, it'll make it wider. Yes. Okay, good. All right. So at least I have a bigger piece of real estate here. Mordechai yada, right? Remember, Mordechai knew. Okay. Al yada de Eliyahu kahana rabba. Yat kol ma de'ita bed bishmei meroma. He knew everything that had taken place. How did he know? Because Eliyahu, Kohen Gadol, right? Eliyahu the Navi, who was a Kohen. Eliyahu the Kohen Gadol of Shmei Shemayim came to him. He had a Gilui Eliyahu and told him everything that had taken place, not everything that had taken place in Achashverosh's palace, everything that had taken place up above in the heavens. And what it was that had caused Am Yisrael to be guilty, to be given a punishment of being removed entirely from the world. And how it was that it had been written and it had been sealed up above, okay? To lahovaduton is la'abed, okay? There's a hey, aleph, tend to switch around a little bit between Aramaic and Hebrew, and so it's the same shorsh, aleph, bet, dalet, right? That the Jews were given over to be completely wiped out, bed, and this is the same shorish, but the Aramaic version thereof, to destroy them from alave upon the earth. And hechtan itkativ itkadim shuvpan, again. And how it was that it was written and it was sealed bishmei Roma in the heavens above. What was it? Al esak de'it haniu min sudate de Achashverosh Rishia. This is something that most of us know from the Mefarshim and from Esther Rabbah, which is that what was it that caused the Jews to be vulnerable to Haman's machinations was that they had attended the meal that Achashverosh had given back in the previous chapters. And by the way, he's not just called Achashverosh, he's called Achashverosh Rishia. Achashverosh, the wicked one. The Targumim have a habit of adding an epithet to everybody's name. So we're going to see that Mordechai is almost never just called Mordechai. He's Mordechai Tzadika, right? It's like we say Moshe Rabbeinu, Yosef Tzadik. So the Targum does the same thing. We're in good company. But Achashverosh is not the Tipesh, the fool, which is the way he's sometimes referred to by Chazal, but he's being referred to as Achashverosh the wicked. Okay, because they had gone to his Suda, all right, and not just they'd gone to it, Haniu, right, Hana'ah, they'd taken pleasure from it, right, and what had he done? He had brought out the Kalim of the Beit HaMikdash, and they were there just like enjoying themselves like everybody else in the kingdom, yay, new king, peace, and they didn't pay attention to the things that they ought not to be, they ought not to really have been there. Baram Hotama Hava Hatin Mintina. Okay, and so because of this, it was sealed, and the like with sealed and this I don't have, right? I don't have Pachak and Katav on this. I can't turn it back into Hebrew. This was sealed against them, like it was sealed with pitch, with, like completely sealed up. There's no way to do anything. But Shdar Mare Alma Yad Eliyahu Kahana Rabba Lachava'a Mordechai. Nonetheless, even though the decree had been made and had been sealed, and it was like in iron, it was like there's no getting out of this, guys. You did it wrong. It's a mess. There's no getting out of it, you think. But the master of the world, Mare Alma, sends, right? It's a word you might recognize from Hebrew, Shidur Chai, live transmission. He transmits, he sends Eliyahu, Kohen Rabbah. That's, again, the epithet that goes along with Eliyahu's name here, not the Navi, which is how we usually call him, but Kohen Rabbah. L'chava'ah, to tell Mordechai, Diakum v'yitzale, that he should get up and he should daven. Kadam Mariama, before the master of the world, al-Ami, for his people. Right? If he doesn't know that there's the decree, he doesn't know that he needs to daven for them. But he says, so Targum Rishon says that Eliyahu was sent to Mordechai to tell him, you need to daven for the people. The Kadyada Mordechai, and once Mordechai knew, then B'zayat Levushe, okay, he tore his garments, Va'albesh Levusha Desak, and he dressed in a garment of sackcloth, Al Bisre, on his flesh. V'shave Kitma Al Reshe, and he put the ashes on his head. Ukvel Kvel Taramsa, and he gave out this great cry. Uvacha b'merirut nafsha, and he cried with the bitterness of his soul, baka atsev, with a torn, just absolutely torn up voice. What is he doing? He's doing the davening that he was told to do by Eliyahu, right? And that's why he's doing it in public. That's the vision that Targum Rishon gives us. Am Yisrael sinned. They have one last defender between them and absolute dissolution. I mean, we see that in a couple weeks, Parsha, where Moshe is the only one between us and being wiped out also, right? And he's told, on the one hand, he's told that it's signed and sealed, and on the other hand, he's told you need to get up and to daven. And so he gets up and he cries but that's the picture that we're given from Targum Rishon. Targum Sheni is going to give us a slightly different picture. And for this, so Sima, you do have it in your email if you want to follow along in your own, but I'm just going to change my share I'm going to change the share to this one, which is the text. And I will try to have a slightly better version of the text by next week. That's a problem of my having been sick and just not having it all put together. I apologize. So here starts Targum Sheni. I'm pointing with my finger at my screen like you can see that. You can see my finger, but you can't see. I'll point with my... It takes a while to learn, like I have to point with the pointer, right? Okay. I'm pointing with the little hand on the screen. this is where the Targum is. Okay, this is Targum Sheni. And the other side is Patshegan Haktav. And I got this not out of my text, which would have been very hard to read, but I have a friend who graciously lets me borrow hers. She has a Mikro Gedolot Anach called Nechama L'Mareh. It's really nice to look at. That's the name. Nechama L'Mareh is the whatever the title of this version of Mikro Gedolot Nach, this publisher's version of it. And in fact, it really is nice to look at. And he does the Megillah with the Targum, and then he does do Rashi and Ibn Ezra, and then he does Targum Sheni and Patshegan Ketav right there together with it, so that you're moving page by page. It makes the Megillah take many more pages to fit in all of Targum Sheni. And he also makes Patshegan Ketav, like you can kind of follow along. You see, okay, here, verse Aleph, here's verse Aleph, and you can follow along. So, for people who want to, you can follow along in Patshegan Ketav, which is to the side. I'm going to be reading off of the Aramaic, off of Targum Sheni, and I'm going to be doing more or less a free translation into the Hebrew. Into English. So Mordechai Tzadika. Remember I said we call people with, they get a title. So Mordechai's title is Hatzadik. Chaza Baruch Kudsha. He didn't get a Gilui Eliyahu. He saw with Ruach HaKodesh. Yat kol ma d'itaved, everything that had happened. Kol ma shenasa. Okay, what does that mean? And Shadar, question is who sent? Is it Hashem sent, or is it that Mordechai sent? Not clear. Shadar, Malka lahechale biyad Avadohi. So the king sent. Presumably, this is not Achashverosh, right? We know that in the Megillah, everywhere it says Hamelech, it's really referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By the way, unlike the Megillah itself, where the name Hashem never appears, we'll see later on that the Targumei don't have a problem introducing God into the story. Okay, so the king, he sends to his palace by means of his servants, his righteous servants, Abadohi Tzidikaya, Levat to whom? To Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi, to the three last of our Nevi'im, Diyatvun B'lishkat HaGazit, who are currently sitting in the Lishkat HaGazit. Now, this is already a...
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Is this in his... This is what he's seeing in Ruach HaKodesh or in real time?
I believe this is what he's seeing in Ruach HaKodesh. I agree. I believe that's how to read the story, is that he saw with Ruach HaKodesh everything that took place. What is everything that took place? That the king sent to his palace by means of his servants, his righteous servants, Chak-2. And the question is to who are the righteous servants? Are Biyad and Levat, it sounds like by means of, and then that the servants are the ones who took it to Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. It's not, I was not 100% clear on the story. If I look at, right, and if I look at it in the Hebrew, it's the same thing. It says by means of his righteous servants, or by means of his servants, the tzaddikim. So who is that? Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Yosef? I don't know. By means of the tzaddikim, to Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi are sitting in the Lishkat HaGazit. Now, they may be sitting in the Lishkat HaGazit, but the Lishkat HaGazit is only part of Beit Sheni, which isn't built yet. Okay, so they're sitting in the Lishkat HaGazit. This is in the future, hasn't yet taken place. They're being, right? I mean, Akash Baruch Hu, there's no beginning, there's no end. The time is something that really has no control over him in any way whatsoever. But you see that the story in Targum Sheni tends to do things that you have to have a certain amount of suspension of disbelief for Targum Sheni, okay, and say, okay, fine, right. We're having a flash into Bayit Sheni, which is not yet. It's okay that it's not yet built. And the Nevi'im, who are part of the Anshe Knesset Gedola, and Mordechai himself will eventually become part of the Anshe Knesset Gedola along with them, are sitting there in the Lishkat HaGazit, because what's the Lishkat HaGazit? The Lishkat HaGazit is the place of the Sanhedrin. Okay? Umidna ba, and sounds like one person, not all three of them. Somebody is giving prophecy, okay? And giving prophecy, okay. And here we are. Taman, they're giving prophecy there in this Lishkat HaGazit about the Al-Shura Rabbah Yerushalayim, about the Great Wall of Yerushalayim. Umin b'par de'it v'niyu be'shavinu train Migdalin, and after the 72 towers that studded the Great Wall of Yerushalayim, the 72 towers that sort of overlooked each length of wall and protected it, were built. Then Shadar Achashverosh Rashia. So, in other words, part of what was going on is that if you read in Sefer Daniel, Achashverosh doesn't actually really show up. It's not clear where he falls in the story. Koresh, who comes after Belshazzar, Koresh initially gives permission to the Jews to go back to Yerushalayim and tells them to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash and to rebuild Yerushalayim. And they have permission to do so, and they get a certain amount done, and then it gets stopped. Okay, and so what I think is that the medrash here that's being brought is trying to say, so the wall was being rebuilt, and there was certain progress that was being made, and then Achashverosh somehow is the one who stops it. And then later on, after the end of the story in Megillat, Esther, etc., either Achashverosh or Achashverosh's son is going to be the one who's going to allow the building to continue on again. But so it's gotten this far. And you've got these Migdalim that are built, and now that's being sort of left to the side. That doesn't come back into the story at all for the rest of what we have to say here on the first verse. And he brings, so Achashverosh the Rasha sends, he brings 127 scribes, Minma v'asrin ushva medina, from 127 different nations. Gvar, Megilte, Pinkase, Biyadeh. Each one with his scroll that he's going to write on, and his pinchas that he's taking notes in, his little notebook, okay, in his hand. V'yitivu betare Shushan. And he caused them to sit in the gates of Shushan. Uktavu v'shvachu gzerta kshata al Yehudai va'al nimusehen. And he... and they wrote and they sent this harsh decree against the Jews and against their customs. The Igarta Kadma Katavu, and a sort of prefatory letter, they also wrote about it, Bishmei de Malka, in the name of the king. V'chatmu la be'iz kate de Malka, and they sealed it with the signet ring of the king. Okay, Tabat Melech. B'shadrin yata b'yad v'hataya, and they sent it forth by means of the runners. Okay, that was the end of, right? That's sort of a summary of the end of chapter 3. Okay. V'hechtan hava kativ b'garta. They're telling us now. They didn't tell us in chapter 3. They're telling us now. And I'm glad that we're doing this, by the way, Erev Rosh Chodesh, because Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha, and this is the saddest, hardest part of what we're going to be reading. And so this is the Simcha will be all the much greater for having gone through this, but at least we're dealing with this Erev Rosh Chodesh. Yes? Okay. So so they did, and how was it actually written? And so they're going to tell us the text of the Iggeret. You ever wondered what was written in that text that got everybody so right? He's going to tell us the text.
So cool. So
it
cool.
Is. I'm telling you, Targum Sheni is just a wild, but it's a genre b'fnei atzmo. You understand? It's not that they took the Megillah and that they were trying to write a translation. They're telling stories that come out of either the language of the Megillah, questions you ask, but it's a literary genre on its own, and it is awesome. Okay, so it was written with these harsh words. Either there are two different versions of Targum Sheni. One has bepugne neime, another one, the other one has, why did it make it blue? I don't know. Anyway, bugne, nigme, whatever. Anyway, there are these harsh words. Okay, Inun, this is what it was. Demini Malka Achashverosh L'kol Amamaya V'umaya V'lishnaya. From me, the king Achashverosh, to all of the peoples, nations, languages, Didayarin B'kol Ara, that live anywhere in the world, because he's the emperor of the whole world, right? Shlam Chon Yiske, you should have great, right? Shalom Rav Lechem. Okay, that's how you start a letter. Okay, fine. Who are you? And your proclamation, and who are you writing to? Fine. Mohodina lachon, I want to tell you, make known to you. Gavrachad ata levatana, la min atarana, v'la min medintana. There was one man, he came, not from our place, not from our city-state. Va'ata li'itosfa alana, and he came to add himself to us, li'itgabra al bale devavana, and to help us to overcome our enemies. Badkin Bey, we checked him out. V'hamin shmei, right? And Haman is his name. Bar Agag Malka, Bar Amalek Rabba, Bar Reuel, Bar Eliphaz Buchra de Esav. Bar Shliti. Okay, well, actually, that's his yichus. So let's go through the yichus, right? Haman, who was the son of Agag, or descendant of Agag, the king, who was descendant, right, of Amalek the Great, who is the son of Reuel, who is the son of Eliphaz, who was the firstborn of Esau. Bar Shlitin Umari Nichsin V'atire Aran. He was like the
Sorry,
government.
I want to interrupt for a second. Reuel is sticking out at me. Amalek's father was Reuel?
Yes. So
because wasn't Reuel one of the names of
Yitro? It's not. Yes, good for you, and it's not the same Reuel. It is not the same Reuel. Reuel is a name, and it's a name that more than one person was given. We have other names in Bereshit that show up in different families, and you get a little confused as to, wait a minute, which one are we talking about? And so you made the correct connection that Reuel is one of Yitro's names, but it's a different Reuel.
Fine.
Good for you. Okay. So, and if you look in Bereshit, I don't remember which the pasuk is, but if you look in Bereshit, when it's giving the yechus, you'll see that there he is, the son of Eliphaz. Anyway, so we have this guy, and Eliphaz is for sure the firstborn of Esav, and this Haman he also has he's got like great lands. He's in charge of all sorts of stuff. He's the master of much wealth. He's rich, and he's very rich as a result of these lands. Atire, we'll see on and off with the Aramaic, a taf and a shin often switch. So atire means ashir. Okay. V'sha'al mini she'elta. And she'elta ze'era v'kalila, right? And he asked me just a small minor request. V'chavi li al Yehudai, v'al milehon, v'al nimusehon. And he told me about the Jews and about their words, their things, and about their customs. V'al dela kashrin, and they're not really such kosher good people. V'amar li kad nefaku mimitzrayim shitin rivavin gavrehon, and that when they left Egypt, 10,000, right, the 600,000 of their men. And they told me all this. Va'ana, he says, this is what Haman says to Achashverosh, Eten lach shitin revavin mine dekasva. I'm going to give you 600,000 portions of silver, right? The 10 talents of gold, which are equal to the doubled machzita shekel, or the 3 times actually machzita shekel that was given in the midbar. But he says, but Haman's saying, look, I'll give you the same amount. Okay, I'll give it to you. The 600,000 of it, I'm going to give you 1 portion of silver for each one of the root souls, as it were, of the people of Israel. Va'ama hadin zabinitli lukto. And this people, you should sell them, right? Sell them to me, that I can kill them, to kill them off. So Khan, Anna, Malka, Chashverosh, Sagi, Chadeti. Okay, so now I said, did I skip something? Because they repeated the words at some point. No, I don't think so. All right, fine. So he says, so Achashverosh continues, and I would say he's not hiding anything according to Targumei. He's laying it all on the line that everybody should know where this anti-Semitism is coming from. Okay. Kan ana malka Achashverosh sagi chadeti. I was very happy. This chadeti, we're going to see chad in another sense a little bit later, but here the chadeti is like the word chedva, right? Sasan Simcha, Chedva V'Reut. Chedva is a word also in Hebrew, and it's the word for Simcha in Aramaic. So I was very happy. Samachti. V'dati shapirat alai, and my dati tovalai. I thought this was a great idea. V'kaspa Nisevat mine, and I took the money from him, which of course that's not what it sounded like in the Megillah story itself, but maybe he takes it and he gives it back to him. But anyway, he says initially, I took it from him. Va'ama, and the people, zabenit le l'ktala, and I sold him the people to kill them. Kan, now, achulu ushtu v'chadu, and then they ate and they drank and they were merry, right? That's from the end of the previous chapter where it said that Haman and the king, the Hamelech Haman yashvu lishtot. Okay, so they didn't just drink according to this. They ate and they drank and they were happy. Kamada anan achia, oops. This is going to be, let's see if I need to make this larger so that I can actually read it. We could say fit width, that's better. Okay. So now we're on to the next page. You're going to have to tell me when to quit. I know we still have a few minutes to go till 11. Often with these Targum classes, it'll run an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and whatever. So you just tell me when you have to go. If I haven't managed to finish the first verse, we'll finish it next week. If I can finish the first verse, I would really like to, just because it's a complete unit and the story just pulls you forward, right? Anyway, so we're eating and drinking.
As long as you want. I'm really enjoying this.
Wonderful. I'm so glad. And I'm so looking forward to doing this in person. I was so excited about doing that. And then I got sick. You have no idea how upset I was that I got sick. It was like, really? Really? Like I didn't care about the being sick. It was like, but anyway, Kechabricho has his own plans. We'll go with his plans. At any rate, now here you see again this shorish, the chet daled thing, right? So the achid, so he says, so this is the king's command. The achid bekashta lechod bekashta. Those who, this is a place where sometimes to make the switch between Aramaic and Hebrew has a zayin and Aramaic has a daled. It was a shift in the way things were pronounced over time, or just over geographical distances or whatever. And so you would read this as mi she'ochez bekeshet, somebody who holds a bow and arrow. He should lechoz bekeshet. He should grab hold of his bow and arrow. Dachid b'saifa lechod b'saifa. And whoever wields a sword should grab hold of his sword. Ufuku ushlutu bahon. And you should and go forth and rule over them. In other words, take control over them, over those Jews. Okay. And the question is it la'arbatasar? So it's so interesting. Here it says on the 14th and the 15th of the month, okay, liyerach adar delishanana, of the coming year, that on the 14th and the 15th you should do it. Now, how do they know it's going to be on the 15th? They don't know it's going to be on the 15th. Okay. And besides which, neither the 14th nor the 15th make any sense. The day that it was supposed to be was on the 13th. So I had actually prepped this out of the Targum Sheni that I have in my own Mikro Gedolot with my Chumash. And on mine, it also says Arbasar, but then in the different kinds of parentheses, it changed it to say on the 13th, because the 13th was the day that they were actually told that they were supposed to go out and kill the Jews. So you've got a little bit of a problem. The text has come down to us about the 14th and the 15th, because of course, that's when we do what? That's when we celebrate Purim. But the day of the non-Jews were supposed to go out and fight against us, or not the non-Jews, but the anti-Semites were supposed to go out and fight against us. That actually was on the 13th. Okay. So the text, it's not, this is not a text that was written with full out Ruach HaKodesh the way Megillat Esther was. This is not a text which was perfectly edited, and Shibushim got in during the generations, and we just acknowledge it and move on. But at any rate, in the month of Adar for the coming year, V'lo techusun al malkehon, v'lo al shiltehon, v'lo al ravnehon, v'lo al dardekehon. And you shouldn't have mercy neither on their kings, nor on their rulers, nor on their chieftains, their rabbanim, their important people, nor on their youth, their children. Targumei. When you consider the fact that the only reason that Haman is alive is because Shaul HaMelech made the mistake of having mercy on the king of Amalek, to have the decree against us say, now be careful, don't have mercy, not on their kings, not on anybody, not for any reason. Like it just like takes the dagger and twists it a little bit, and not on the children. Not on the children. Elahen yaton kutulu umamanelhon buzu gvar lenafshe. Rather, you should kill them, and their money is free to be taken. Whatever, it's booty. Each person for himself. Go kill as many as you can. Take as much as you can. Demini malka achashverosh l'kol amamaya v'umaya v'lishnaya. And this is from me, the king Achashverosh, to all of the peoples and the nations and the languages, l'kol atar v'atar, to every single place, l'kol medina, and to every single province, whatever, l'kol shivta v'shivta, and to every tribe, l'kol zare, and to every race, l'kol kirya v'kirya, and to every little town. This is what I'm commanding you. Di mishtachak taman avda Yehudai o amta Yehudaita, that if there is to be found there a single Jewish slave or Jewish maidservant, yitnaksun ravru nevayhon al tare dahu kirya. That place where this single Jew is found, the leaders of that place are going to be slaughtered in the public gates of that city. Mitul dala kabilu bizarta demalka, because they didn't accept. You save a single Jew, the leaders their lives are on the line, because they didn't. It's not just they didn't accept, right? They didn't they didn't obey the gezerah, the decree of the king. Diana Achashverosh tzave, d'la yishtachak Yehudae al ape ara malchuti. Because I, Achashverosh, want that there should not be found any Jew on the face of the earth of my kingdom. V'chad kaza Mordechai tzadik yad gezerta di it gezangat. V'yad igarta de'it chatimat. And so when Mordechai, the tzaddik, saw the decree that had been decreed and the letter that had been sealed, he couldn't bear to be in the nice clothes, whatever, and he tore it off of him from front and from back. So I don't lose my place. Okay. It says Seka, actually, it says it palpel b'kitma, and he covered himself with sackcloth, and he peppered himself with ashes. Right? Pilpel. He peppered himself with ashes. V'arem v'kale v'amar, and he raised up his voice and he said, Vai ma rabahi gezerata hada, de'it gezer alana. How great, how gadol, as in beyond me, right? Is not great, like it's wonderful. Is this decree that has been decreed against us, Tigzar Malka Vahaman, the king and Haman decreed. La al palga gazar upalga shvak, not that it was decreed on part and that part would escape. V'la al tilta, v'la al riva, and not on a third and not on a quarter. Elahen al kol gufna kola gzar lana malka v'haman. But on the entire body of the Jewish people, it was decreed against us. The king and Haman have decreed against us. L'makar l'shetzia yatana, to uproot us and to destroy us, like lahashchit. Min shorshoy, from our roots, that there should be nothing left. V'kad chazu. Now he went out and he was crying and he was dressed in the sackcloth and he had the ashes and he went out into public. Now, why did he do that, right? So listen to how Targum Sheni tells us what was like the thinking going, not the thinking, but the process that Mordechai is trying to cause to take place. So all of the people saw that Mordechai Tzadikaya, to Rav Chashiv Alehan, right? He's a Rav, he's an important person amongst them. They saw him like this. So Kulhon it Kanshu, Va'atun Levate, they all like gathered together and they came towards him. Adahava Kahal Rav, Va'am Sagyalachta, delayed Lahon Minyan, until there was a great congregation and so many people that it was impossible to even count them. And then once all the people gathered together, so why did he go out into the city? So that everybody should see him and everybody should gather around together, right? And once they all gathered together, so then Kam Mordechai al Ragla, he gets up on his feet, Begol Kahal, in the midst of this congregation. And he raises up his voice, V'kein Amar Lahon, and this is what he says to them. Ama Beit Yisrael, Chaviva v'Yakira Kadam Avoidi V'Shmaya. The people of the house of Israel, beloved and precious before their Father in heaven. La yadatun madahava, you don't know what happened. La shamitun madigzaralana malka vahamin lovda. Novada Yatana, right? And you don't know, you haven't heard what it is that the king and Haman have decreed against us to wipe us out. Meilave ape ara, from upon the face of the earth. L'shetza ayatana mitchot shmaya, and to completely cut us down so there's nothing left from underneath the heavens. Leitlan malka denistmich alai. We have no king that we can rely upon. Uvlan navia div-e rachmin alana, nor do we have a navi who can request mercy upon us. Atar leitlan alamerok. We have no place that we can flee to. Uf lamedinta denishtazev tama, nor do we have any state, any place that we can be saved there. Because in every single place in the world it's been written against us. Medina ishtadarlana, in every single state it has been sent there, right? This is the Shadar. Every single state it's been sent there, transmitted this message of hatred and destruction against us. Hevena ka'ana delate la re'eh. We are become like a flock that does not have a shepherd. Ukasfinta biyama delate la madbarna, and like a ship at sea that doesn't have a helmsman. V'hevena kiyatmin delate lahon abba, and we're like orphans that have no father. V'kat inun yankin mitat imhon, and when they were like, I'm going to have a hard time saying this without crying because I just was watching you with your baby, and when we were suckling, our mother died. The mother died. So not just orphans from the father, that there's no protection, but from the mother, there's no one to nurture us. So in Otosha'a, right, at that time, they heard that from him. Now, listen, before I go on though, just listen to the difference in tone. Targum Rishon said, we sinned, it's our fault. And Mordechai tried to, went out he had to have orders, as it were, from Eliyahu to go out and to try to, nonetheless, despite the fact that we had sinned, to try to intercede on our behalf with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Mordechai, in this picture from Targum Sheni, is speaking so gently to the people. He's not telling them, you were bad, it's your fault, this is Megillah L'chai. He's not saying anything like that at all, right? You're such precious people, and we have nowhere to turn but to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's bringing them to tshuva, but it's really a tshuva out of love. He's not chas v'shalom saying to them, oh, look how bad you are, or anything else. It's such a different picture, to me anyway, that I'm getting from the way that this is being written to us. Okay, so what did they do when they heard him say that? So I don't know if you're familiar with, nowadays we do it somewhat because we're here in our own land, and we have, when we do an Etzer Tefillah, okay, when there's some big reason that we need to get lots and lots and lots and lots of people together to daven together. So we go into a big open space, often near Marat Machpelah or near the Kotel, and we bring out the Sefer Torah, and we all gather together in the biggest public space we can find. And this is similar to what we're told in Masechet Tanit. This is what they did when there was some big tsar, whether it was a plague or whether it was a drought or whether it was that enemies were upon us or whatever. And so this is what's about to be described to us. Okay, so let's see if I can now not have lost my place too much. Okay, so Ba'asha'ata, that's right. I want to make sure I get, okay, I have the rest of the page, and then we'll go to the next page. Ba'asha'ata, apiku yat arona l'tare Shushan. At that time, at that moment, so they took out the Aron. In other words, the Aron Kodesh that the Torah was in, they took it out to the gates of Shushan, which is the big public space that they were able to all gather together. Vapiku aloi safra doraita, and they took out of the Aron the Sefer Torah. Kad macharach basaka umafalpel bekitma, and they also dressed that. They dressed the Sefer Torah in sackcloth, and they scattered ashes on the Sefer Torah itself. V'havyan karyan be, and they read in it B'tzar lecha u'mitzaucha. These are things that we read on a Tanit. Hello, it needs to go to the next page. Thank you. All right. Ki kel rachum Hashem Elokecha, etc. And they read the Shoshesrei Midot Rachmi. And after they read from the Torah, then Kam Mordechai al Rigle B'go Kahala Ane V'Kenamar, and he got up once again in the midst of the congregation, and he raised his voice, and this is what he said: Amma Beit Yisrael, the people of the house of Israel, Amma Chaviva v'Yakir, the Chaviva v'Yakir Kadam Elokei. Okay, a beloved and dear, precious people who are beloved and such a treasure before their God. Nekum v'nechze min anshe Ninveh. Let us get up and let us learn. Let us see, literally, but let us learn from the people of Ninveh. Kad ishtalach alehon Yona bar Amitai nevia lemepach yat karta de Ninveh. When the Navi Yonah ben Amitai was sent to them to overturn the city of Ninveh, Umata pitkama levat malka de Nineveh, and the word reached to the king of Nineveh. V'kam mikorse yakira, and he got up from his throne. V'ade taga de malchuta mineh, and he removed his crown, his royal crown, from himself. V'itkase saka v'itpalpel b'kitma, and he dressed himself in sackcloth and dusted himself with ashes. V'achriz b'Ninveh v'amar, and he caused to be announced in Nineveh, and he said, Min gezerte de malka Rav Noi Lemeimar. This should be a decree from the king and his chieftains, his officers, saying, Anasha ubeira tore va'ana la tifkun lemire umaya la yishtun. Neither people nor animals, the oxen nor the sheep, should go out to pasture. Water they shouldn't drink. V'tavu min archaton bishata, and they should do tshuva, they should turn away from their evil ways. Umin chatafa dibya, and from the things that they have snatched that are in their hands, right? It's like kids, Baruch Hashem, children love, they just grab at stuff and they have it and they grab at it, and okay, they do. But adults, you're not supposed to grab at things. You don't just grab things and take them. You grabbed things you took that weren't yours. You need to give it back. You need to, right? Okay. So this is what the king of Nineveh said to get rid of the Hamas, to get rid of the theft that was in that was in the city. Okay. V'tav Hashem, and then maybe, right, God will return from b'meimre min bishata dechashiv lemebed lahon v'la'avan. And so then, because of the tshuva that they did, God turned away from the evil that he had intended to do to them, and he didn't do it, right? Because an evil decree by a Kadosh Baruch Hu, an evil decree is aimed at evil people that need to learn a lesson. And if you do tshuva, you're no longer the target because you're no longer there. Okay? And so the decree has nobody to fall upon because there are no evil people left. Okay. V'of, that's like af in Hebrew. It's the other, there are two different words to say to or also. Like in English, we have both to and also. In Hebrew, we have gam and af. In Aramaic, we have nami and of. In this version of Aramaic, we have of. In other versions of Aramaic, it's uf, but whatever. Anyway, v'of, anachna nabid kavaton, and we too should do like they did, like the people of Nineveh. V'nigzor tzomin, and we should decree fasts. V'nikra tanita, and specifically we should call out a tanit, the galinan me Yerushalayim, over the fact that we have been exiled from Yerushalayim. V'kad it chayav sin ehon de Beit Yisrael. Ata, need to move this page again. Okay, and so when the enemies of, actually I'm going to just switch really weirdly on me. Where was I? No. Oh, I've done this page. I'm all the way over to here. Yay. Okay. Okay, and when the enemies of Am Yisrael, the haters of Am Yisrael, will be found guilty, then, which is, although to be honest, I'm not sure if he's using the Lashon Sagi Nahor here or not. We have a habit of saying Sonei Yisrael to mean the sinners of Am Yisrael, but we don't ever, I actually let the words come out of my mouth because I needed to explain what it is, but the Sonei Yisrael doesn't mean self-hating Jews, and it doesn't mean our enemies necessarily. At times it means those who act in a way to make us hateful in chas v'shalom, the eyes of God. And so when they are And so, of course, Mordechai, who was speaking really mamish in a very gentle way to the people, so he doesn't want, and again, so he, of course, doesn't want to say that there's somebody amongst Am Yisrael who sinned, who could possibly have brought this decree upon them. So he says the Sanehon de Beit Yisrael, when they become guilty, when they become chayav to receive a punishment, then Ata Brat Kala Bat Kol should come forth to Karatle. So he's talking about what happened, right? Because he's saying we need to have this tani, we need to fast over the fact that we are in Galut from Yerushalayim. That when these Sonei of Bnei Yisrael sinned and the full measure of their sin was reached. So then a bat kol came forth and it called to Nebuchadnezzar, Malka de Bavel, the king of Bavel, Amaratle, and it said to him, Malka Nebuchadnezzar Kasdan, King Nebuchadnezzar the Kasdai, Aramean, Kum V'sak al Yerushalayim, get up and ale, right? Kum ale el Yerushalayim. I just lost you. I'm still on this time. Kind of. Okay. I'm going to wait a minute, assuming that I'm still being recorded. I'm going to wait a minute, hoping that Simma's going to come back. And if she doesn't, right, because it's showing that I'm still recording. And if she doesn't come back, I'm going to finish it out, maybe. It's going to be silent here for a moment, folks, while we sort this out. Whoops. I'm here. Back, maybe trying to come back. Yay. Okay. So we're actually close to the end. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. We're actually like so close to the end. I was like, should I leave it with a cliffhanger? There's so little left. We're almost done with this first verse in Targum Sheni. Anyway, so there came forth this bat kol to tell Nebuchadnezzar that he should go up and destroy, and besiege and destroy Yerushalayim. Right, v'achrif yata, and uklei beit mikdash benura, and to burn the Beit HaMikdash in fire. Now, you have to know that according to Chazal, according to all sorts of Agadata, and it's in the Gemara, it's not just in one place. I ran into it, and I teach also Sefer Daniel, and I ran into it in Sefer Daniel as well, and it makes me very confused. But there's an Agadata that the text here is referencing, that Daniel, the Medrash and stuff in Pirushim and Daniel also references, which is that Nebuchadnezzar must have been a very old man, okay? Because according to the Medrash, and that's what's being about to be referenced here, Nebuchadnezzar was one of Sennacherib's generals before he became the head of Bavel and destroyed the descendants of, right? Sennacherib was the king of Ashur. And at some point, when Nebuchadnezzar starts his march towards being a world emperor, he one of the first countries he takes off after is Ashur, in fact, which was the country that Sancherib had been the emperor, the king of, the emperor. But you have to understand, Sancherib is during the time of Chizkiyahu. The Navi at the time is Yeshayahu. Nebuchadnezzar is the one who actually destroys Beit Sheni. It's like 150 years later. Okay? And so I personally am just like, how old was he? Why doesn't anybody talk about how old he was? Like, what's going on? But again, suspension of disbelief here. I don't quite understand why it is that it's important to Chazal to somehow place Nebuchadnezzar there with Sancherib, but they do. And so that's what this next little bit here is referencing. So at that time, Nebuchadnezzar Shaya Menid Bereshet. He initially shook his head, like, who me? I really don't want to do that. Why? But Muvil Umaiti Biadeh, and he took things and he tried to figure out, was there a way to get away from this decree, this bat call? Because why? Because he remembered. Okay, he knew. He remembered. It's not just that he knew the story of what happened in the end to the encampment of Sancherib, right? Sancherib's camped outside the city, and then they get destroyed. The whole army of Sancherib, I think they're going to tell us here, is it they're going to tell me, right? When the angel was sent against them, Mishmei Meroma, from the high heavens, Uktal Minhon, and killed from them Timnat Asar Ravavan V'chamisha Alfin, 185,000. Now, this says Elahu Bilchodi, that there was nobody left in the entire camp of Sancherib other than he himself, just Nebuchadnezzar. In other places in Chazal, in the Gemara and Sanhedrin, etc., it tells us that he was one of only 10 people that were left. The only reason that they left, that the angel, by some miraculous nature, saved out 10 people, was so that it would be known what happened, because otherwise it would be a miracle with no witnesses. This way it was a miracle with witnesses. It's a bigger deal. Okay, so he knew about this. He wasn't so thrilled about the thought of being sent against Yerushalayim, because he knew what had happened to Sancherib. He's like, really, I don't want to do this. However, Ben Chankad, so that we're not going there about the whole business, though, for Nebuchadnezzar, because this is not about Nebuchadnezzar. This is about that Mordechai is trying to arouse the Jews of Shushan to have a day of fasting, not only of doing tshuva, that was the first thing, right? To be like the people of Nineveh, but also to have a day of avelus on the fact that we are in exile from Yerushalayim and that the Beit HaMikdash is not built. And so once he mentions this, so then again, he tore his clothes and he put on lavash saka, and he put on sackcloth, v'yitiv ba'afra, and he sat in the dust, v'it pilpil b'kitma, and he dusted himself over with the ashes. V'sare v'machta d'mayin, and he was just drenched with tears. V'kein amar beresh b'achyata chaval alechon beit Yisrael min gzar din hadid. Woe unto you! This he just gave himself over to the crying, and he said, chaval on you, house of Israel, from this decree that has gone forth against you. And then nafak b'go karta v'tzavach tzav. And this last little bit isn't, it's just, oh, let me finish translating the verse. Like you could take the first half line of the Targum Sheni to this pasuk, and you can take this last little line, half line, and you put it together, and that's an actual translation of the verse in the Megillah. But the whole piece in between is the story as to why it says that. And so he went out, Begol Karta, in the midst of the city, Tzavach Tzavta, Rabta, Marira, Adlakta, and he gave a great and bitter cry.
Because it sounds like a little bit like we're talking to the worst has already happened. The worst being that Yerushalayim was captured and destroyed. The Beis Hamikdash was destroyed already. So like now you have like the tzaddik telling us that we need to do tshuva for something we've done when already the worst has happened. We're already in the exile.
Well, I mean, they're at a point where there's been a decree of extermination. You know, right. Hitler Maximo wanted to accomplish what Haman failed to accomplish, and Baruch Hashem, in the end, he did not, but he made a darn good attempt towards that. You know, so on the one hand, yes, but I think also part of what the tzaddik is trying to tell us is that, right, we had nowhere to go because we were still in exile, because, right, in any generation, the Beit HaMikdash is not rebuilt. It's as though it's destroyed in that generation. And that goes for us, even though we're zocha to be here living in Eretz Yisrael. But there's no trying to think of what the right word is. There's no, there's no, like he said, I mean, like the Targum has him saying, there's nowhere for us to turn. There's nowhere for us to go. There's no escape hole. And that's because we don't have Yerushalayim. That's because we don't have Har HaBayit. Because if we had that, then the tshuva, in the sense of, you know, like tshuva rishona, or the tshuva on the returning to the healthy relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I can stop sharing my screen actually. That tshuva is possible and gets deeper and more wondrous. You know, that return to that healthy relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something that is really facilitated by our being in our own land and being particularly in Yerushalayim and having the temple on its mount where it belongs, because that facilitates all of that. And so part of what he was saying to them is, yes, you have to do tshuva for whatever you personally like, right? You're such dear, wondrous people, but we need to do tshuva, just like the people in Nineveh needed to do tshuva. There's a decree, it must be that we need to do tshuva, figure out what we need to do tshuva. But he doesn't, you know, he's not fire and brimstoning, right? He's not saying to them, you did X, Y, Z bad. He's telling them, yes, you need to do tshuva, but then he's also telling them, but realize that the part of what prevents us from doing a full and complete tshuva, right, is that we're in exile, is that we don't have that Beit HaMikdash, right, that we...
I mean, it seems like it's very fresh in the.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking to myself, like I don't know, this is very, very shocking, because like it's like all very fresh. Like they just went. What do you mean, like what to do tshuva from? They just went to this feast, and in the feast there was all these vessels from the Beit HaMikdash, and all these, you know,
Right.
it's all very fresh. It's all makes sense that Mordechai is talking about Nebuchadnezzar and Sennacherib and all these things, because these were on display at the party they've been at.
Right. Now, remember, the party that they were at was in the early days of Achashverosh's reign. And then he had, and he had Vashti put aside, and then he had to search out Esther. And then Esther got chosen. That took a couple of years. It is quite possible that this is about 9 years later, according to the timeline. It's not immediate in terms of that, number one. But number two, yes, you're absolutely right. Look, Targum Rishon tells us exactly like Chazal that this is a Mida Keneged Mida, because they were not mourning the Beit HaMikdash. In other words, yes, they should have, when they saw the Kalim come out, they should have torn their clothing and cried in the middle of that feast. And they should not have been able to continue eating and drinking and being at the feast. Absolutely correct. Okay. And the closest that Mordechai in Targum Sheni gets to saying that to them is by reminding them that they need to be in a velus over the Beit HaMikdash, right? That they need to do tshuva, that the fact that they can't do a proper tshuva is in part because because we're in exile, because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. And so that's like, for anybody who has ears to hear, who's there, yes, it's going to bring it home to them. But he's doing it to me at least, it feels like he's doing it in such a gentle way. Okay. He's not taking the entire responsibility of davening to Hashem on himself, right? He's trying to get all of Am Yisrael to do it also. He's not, right, which is the Targum Rishon has him acting alone, and the rest of the Jews, like, where are they? They're not there.
Right.
Okay. And he's not going out and saying to them, I heard that you guys were sinners and you did da-da-da-da-da-da. No. But yes, he's bringing it up. For anybody who has ears to hear, they're like, oi, like, and how could I have sat by and seen the Kalim from the Beit HaMikdash being used in such a, maybe not disgraceful, but being used, in such a way that made light of their holiness. How could I have sat by and done that? Like, I have tshuva to do. And even once I do tshuva on that, I'll have tshuva, like, right, tshuva rishona. I don't know. For me, I just feel that the two, they complement each other. I think, neither one of them, they do not contradict each other per se. I find Targum Sheni in this case, there are times when I find Targum Rishon to be, like, oh, that's the way I want to tell the story to my kid. There are times, like for this particular verse, there are times where Targum Sheni has what to teach me about, how do you give tochacha to somebody? Chaviv v'yakir. beloved and precious, right? It's like, whoa, that's such a different lesson, such a different. And so, like I said, it's not just that they're telling over the story. They are telling over the story, but there's hashkafa here. There's and the whole thing is like this. So I very much look forward to next week.
Learning in person.
Learning in person. I hope that you will have guests who will come and join us.
Amen. I hope so too.
Right. And I'll see if I can figure out. I mean, I finally got to put up on I finally got to put up on Facebook today, which was a little bit late. I originally sent, so you have, and everybody else has the initial, I'm trying to think what the right word is. Everybody has the link. They have the link that gets them directly into the meetings, which is fine, but then they aren't registered. Now, I registered you, okay? Because I had your email address and I knew you were interested. So I was like, okay, I'm going to register somehow and take care of that one. So there are a couple people I did register. Most
so if
people
you can to send me like the link to register, I can send that on to some people also. Okay,
that would be great. And I sent a lot to a lot of people. I sent it by WhatsApp, but when I sent it originally, I sent it like I did to you. I sent the link to get in straight rather than the link to register. The link, what'll happen is the link to register will they'll automatically register, and then they'll get an email with the link that I originally sent out.
Okay.
That'll happen without anybody's intervention. It'll just go nicely. But then I will have a list of email addresses so that I can send them the text, so that I can send them the playlist, etc. So that if they miss something, they want to go back and hear it again. I'm pretty sure that I can get my hands on the playlist from last year for people who are interested. If people have to send me a request for that. I'm not sure where the playlist is from the first year that we did this. This is the third year that we're working on this. But I'm working with the people at Simchat Shlomo to track it down because it's theirs. I was teaching for them. I was using their channel to record stuff on. So assuming that I didn't fail to record things, which occasionally happens to me. And also that first year was actually before Corona.
Right.
Hard to believe.
What? There was a world before Corona?
Right, there was BC, and we're like DC right now during Corona, and I pray that starting today will be PC post-Corona. Okay, a new meaning of PC. Okay, anyway, so you should have mamash a chodesh tov. Marbin b'simcha. And we will meet in person next week because I will be out of be by then.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.